Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by three friends who love cinema. I'm Oliver, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Gus and Nate. Tonight, you'll be staying in room 128, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the classic live-action animation hybrid directed by Robert Zemeckis. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we uncover Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
25 grand over budget on the latest Baby Herman cartoon. You saw the rabbit blowing his lines. He can't keep his mind in his work. You know why?
Seen cooing over calamari with not-so-new sugar daddy was wife of maroon cartoon star Roger. What's this got to do with me?
You're the private detective. You figure it out. His wife's poison. I want you to follow her. Give me a couple of nice, juicy pictures I can wise the rabbit up with.
What's going on, all you tunes? Thanks for checking back in the Grand Cinema Hotel. As always, if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us a little comment, tell us what you're thinking about. If you're listening on any of the podcast listening apps, don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications so you get let know when we drop our newest podcast episode.
Drop an anvil on the
dude,
like button.
Yeah, dude, drop a ton of bricks on my head, please. But in honor of Chip and Dale coming out this week, we kind of wanted to talk about a movie that is near and dear to our childhood and also deals with that live action animation hybrid combination. A lot of Asians right there. But that takes us to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, a fucking all-time classic and a movie that I love. You want to go ahead and talk about maybe your first time seeing it?
I thought we were doing Looney Tunes back in action.
Oh, I'm not prepared for this.
No love for Brendan Fraser?
Not there. That's one I don't like at all.
Sacrilegious.
That's okay. I'll just take the Mummy trilogy. I'll be fine with that. I'd even take the Emperor one over Looney Tunes back in action.
What about the Scorpion King?
Yes, Papa, all day. Do you mind if I start with Chip and Dale first?
Yeah.
I got to get it in where
Bust
we can.
it
We would
down.
never do this episode unless Roger Rabbit was probably attached to it. But we watched that. I watched it recently. Ro has seen it also. I thought that was a very successful film, and I do think it was about time that something like this was done again.
Yeah.
And done to this level, because we've had Space Jam, we've had Looney Tunes back in action,
Osmosis Jones.
Cool World, Osmosis Jones, but even that one kind of walks that line on a more. They're more separated by each other. You know, they don't really take place in each other's worlds.
No, you're right.
Just seeing two different worlds. I don't really have a lot to say about that, and that's why we're not doing an episode on this, but I just thought that was a fun, great kids movie that I can't wait to, see as the years pass on. And it's good to see that Disney can remember how to make a good movie every once in a while. You know what I mean? Not that they're making horrible movies, but it's just cool to see them, I don't want to say be back on top, but it's just nice for them to remember, we can make the best versions of a movie. And I think that taking us back to Roger Rabbit, they hadn't done this since 1988 or whatever, and it was just due time. And I'm glad that they made that, because then it got us talking about Roger Rabbit.
Yep.
But Ro, do you want to say anything about Chip and Dale?
Yeah, I was going to say that's the reason why I think it almost became obvious to talk about Roger Rabbit, because they're compared in that way that it doesn't seem like they're just made to be a cash grab. It does seem like there's some thought here. It does seem like they are brought kind of to flex Disney's animation power and what they can get done. I really did enjoy Chip and Dale. I thought it wasn't just a cameo service like some of the other stuff that Disney's known for doing. I thought that they did a good job of bringing back characters that the kids nowadays would have no idea who they are, and thus, creating a new audience for something. And especially, which I think this does a lot, is the golden generation of cartoons. Chip and Dale kind of reminds the new audience of that same those golden characters, and that's what this movie did in 1988. And that's why the comparison became so obvious, and that's why we had so much more to say about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But I would definitely suggest that if you do really like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that go watch Chip and Dale.
Do you have a favorite cameo from Chip and Dale? Mine was Randy from South Park.
That's funny.
Oh man, it's so hard. There were so many characters in there that I did not expect. I mean, I think the obvious one and the one that just stands out is Ugly Sonic. You know?
Yeah, we love Tim Robinson.
That's why,
this
yeah.
podcast stands Tim
Tim
Robinson.
Robinson.
100%.
My favorite one that I also saw was, I don't know if you noticed, there was like a Naruto version
Yeah.
also in there. That was the one that for me, because it's one of my favorite animes
Yeah.
of all time. So
I
that
did
was a
see
big
that.
one for
I
me.
did catch that.
Also, they had Sora's hair. Did you see that?
I didn't see
Sora
that
from
one.
Kingdom Hearts.
I didn't see that one.
Okay, but they had some really fun stuff in it. I thought another standout one was seeing all of Seth Rogen's different animated
That was
characters.
cool. That was cool.
So you got like the Mantis from Kung Fu Panda. You have that blue blob he played from Monsters vs.
Oh,
Aliens. Yeah. And what was the other one? Pumbaa from the new Lion King.
and then he's like his own character in the movie, right? He's not playing
he's
something
his
else.
own character, but I don't get what he's supposed to be from. I think he's just like original, right?
Yeah, I think he's like a Polar Express eyed, like drawn character, like that
That's
style.
Yeah, he
And
looks
that's
like
pretty
Polar
funny.
Express animation.
So bad.
Lifeless.
The other thing too that was a weird connection was that he was in the latest season of Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Okay.
and he kind of. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever really noticed this about Seth Rogen, but he's kind of tried to distance himself from that like raunchy
Comedy?
path
Oh,
he
yeah,
was in,
yeah.
and he's a little more progressive in his ideas now. And in Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry's of course doing the wrong things. So Seth Rogen's kind of like, I don't really want to be friends with you. But he's playing a Viking in that too.
Oh, that's so
I was
funny.
like, is that where that's from? Like, it totally put me into a rabbit hole of like, what is Seth Rogen actually making a Viking movie? This
yeah.
is just like
They're setting us up for
like
it.
an Easter egg for it, but we can get off Chippendale. It's a lot of fun. I highly suggest you guys checking it out. But Roger Rabbit, first times?
yeah. Let's talk about it.
Nate, you go ahead.
All right. I honestly don't remember exactly the first time I saw this. I was young, obviously, because this came out way before I was around. And this was actually a movie that my mom really likes. So we used to watch it all the time. And I just remember, obviously as a kid, it's just so much fun. Like every fucking cartoon character ever is basically in this. And I just remember thinking like, oh, like this is just so cool. The live action with these cartoon characters, like just so well done. And then like watching it now, it's just like I'm able to realize how much of a masterpiece like this movie really is technically, and I mean everything about it. But especially like that's what I really took away from watching it this time was the technical aspects of it, and just how much of a bitch a lot of this probably had to be to make happen.
That's what I was saying.
And just how happy I am that they were able to do it. Like it just is really cool.
What I was gonna say is that, like you said, it's not like when you watch this as a kid, you're like, this is a masterpiece, because you can't even process.
No,
movies
no.
in
What
that
is a
way.
masterpiece
But
at that point?
as a kid, didn't you think it was? Or you're like, this is so good.
Well, I used to watch it all the time. Like
right.
probably at least like once a month at least.
You go ahead, bro. I'll go last on
Okay.
this.
So interestingly enough, this is the same kind of relationship that I saw this with my dad. This is a movie that he grew up, or just like, when he was growing up, he watched a lot. My grandma sent this movie to them when they were still in El Salvador in the VHS. So my he's like, I remember watching this in a VHS, and like, I just thought it was amazing.
Was it a Spanish dub?
No, that's what he said though. That's what he said though too, was that he was like, it didn't have any subtitles, and it was only in English, and we watch it all the time, because I just think that's kind of when it starts to speak at like what you're watching, just physically watching is amazing. And like you're like, I can't believe they pulled this off.
This is why animation works so well
Yeah.
also. Or like the reason Tom and Jerry is funny is because hitting someone over the head with the frying pan knows no borders.
It will
You know what I mean?
always
That
be
will
fucking
funny.
hilarious.
Flattening out the head is just hilarious in the cartoon, the way it looks. But yeah, the first time that I watched it, my uncle showed me this. He sat down, and I just thought it was amazing. And I think in a subliminal way later, I've thought about it. This was like a culmination of the real movies that I liked, which was detective stuff, Batman. Same way, like that noir stuff. And then it also threw in the cartoons. And then I remember thinking, I think that very set the precedent of like, I like noirs. Like, I like that little detective, the dumb little, what would you call him? Like the hat, like where everybody thinks that's a detective, like they look like Inspector
tropes?
Gadget.
Yeah.
The tropes. That was the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. Sorry. Like the tropes. Like I fell in love with the dumb tropes even with it.
Dumb little hats.
The smoky
The
office.
tropes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The way they talk.
Yeah.
So my experience with this movie, and I was telling Nate this before we had started recording, is this is a movie that's been in my life since before I can even remember watching it. There is no first time for me, because when I think of movies, this is a movie that's just always been there because we owned it on VHS. And I think this is probably one of the 5 most important movies to me as a child. It was like a Goofy movie, The Lion King, Roger Rabbit, Wayne's World, and the first Toy Story. So for me, that kind of really just made me the person I am. Like my sense of humor, the kind of things I think are funny. And specifically Roger Rabbit and Wayne's World. Like for me, that was just like the perfect marriage of, like when I was a kid, comedy was my favorite thing. I did not care about anything else as long as it was funny. And I think it's because of those two films specifically. So I've always had a lot of love for Roger Rabbit. And so have my parents. And I mean, honestly, that's a collective theme between the three of us.
Yeah.
And it's because boomers fucking love Robert Zemeckis. He's the ultimate boomer.
true,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, he has that grip on people on a certain age of people that I don't necessarily feel like he had on me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big Back to the Future head either.
No, I'm not either.
But
Are you?
he has
You
made
like
some
it?
films that
I like him, but
do you remember, was the first time you watched it when, do you remember a long time ago when we first started hanging out, we watched it in a big group here?
Back to the Future?
Because I had just gotten it on DVD at the time.
I do remember that. That
your
wasn't the
first
first
time?
time. No.
That was my first time. And even then, I was like, all my friends are having fun, but I don't necessarily love this. I've never felt that way about Back to the Future. And Nate was saying he thinks it's because, well, with both of us, we saw Bill and Ted first. So for me, I'm like, nah, that's way cooler.
Yeah, like
time
that's
traveling.
way more up my alley
the
than.
excellent to each
Yeah,
other.
then yeah.
Because I guess I always I did I don't like it as much as the boomers do. That's for the boomers do. That's for sure. But I always thought the DeLorean was really cool.
The DeLorean is,
obviously,
yeah, that's
yeah,
iconic.
But that's like me as a kid, like that was enough. And
But no.
I had seen it twice before we saw it here. As an adult movie, I'd have to rewatch it now again to think how much I actually like that movie.
I've seen a lot more Robert Zemeckis movies than I thought I would have. But just to go through some of them, it's like Forrest Gump, Castaway. I fucking love Castaway.
Yeah, those
Other
are
than
classics.
this, Roger Rabbit, I think this is probably my favorite
Yeah,
Robert
Castaway.
Zemeckis movie. I really enjoyed Flight with Denzel. That's
Flight's
some
a good
of his
one.
later work. I think the latest thing he made was the remake of Roald Dahl's The Witches, the one with
okay.
Anne Hathaway. But a big one for me, and I didn't even remember this, is that I got really into this when I was younger, and my dad took me to go see Beowulf, and I thought that this was
sick.
like the coolest fucking
It
thing. I
was
had
the
ever
coolest
It
seen.
was
fucking
at the
thing.
time. I remember that.
Bro, I want to fight a monster naked.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
that shit's sick.
Angelina Jolie's in that movie, right?
Yeah.
Beowulf walked so the Northmen could.
Yes. That's funny.
But we also have to bring up the Polar Express because for someone who made maybe the greatest animated hybrid type thing, he also made possibly one of the worst, which is Polar Express.
Hot chocolate,
You want to
baby.
go ahead and talk about your love affair with the Polar
I mean, I
Express?
fuck with the Polar Express. I can't give it any passes for the animation, and like I said, I probably haven't seen that movie in 10 to 12 years. But yeah, I mean, when it came out, the movie was a shit.
He's also still in this world of like hybrid movie making.
That's
Because I
what
don't know if you guys know, but have you ever heard of Welcome to Marwen? It's that movie with Steve Carell. So like Steve Carell makes like dolls and puppets and stuff, and then the movie's actual plot takes place in the world of the.
Oh, that's cool.
No, it's not.
I mean, the idea is
Wait till you see it because it's really not. I don't know.
It's like his character in Dinner for Schmucks with the mice.
Yes. Robert Zemeckis saw that and said, "I can make this better." It's not really my thing. I've given it a chance, but no, thank you.
Sounds
it yucks
interesting.
me out just looking at it. But Robert Zemeckis overall, I mean, you can't talk about film history without talking about him.
Yeah.
And he's a funny little guy, honestly. I know me and Ro were riffing on some of the behind the scenes stuff of him. And he understood the assignment of like, this just needs to be cool. And he really fucking went out of his way to make a great fucking movie.
I will say he seems to be the perfect person that had to direct the movie, even though we obviously find out like Spielberg had a lot to do with it too, producing it. But
The goat had something to
he
do with
obviously
this?
did it.
Exactly.
He didn't direct it himself for a reason, but it seems like Robert Zemeckis does have was the perfect kind of like glue person to get which like Disney, Amblin, all of these things together,
Yeah.
and without them actually having tensions. Like if George Lucas is LucasArts had a lot to do with this too, but it just seems like he was the only person so that all of them didn't feel like one of them was taking too much. Like
a good
Disney's
point.
putting too much Mickey in here, or they're putting too much of their characters in there. So it seems like Robert Zemeckis was there to like, okay, there's a neutral person here. My own vision, and we're just gonna put this together.
No disrespect to Robert Zemeckis, but I've always felt like he's someone who has gotten so many chances because of Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Like Steven Spielberg's like, that's my guy. Like, because all of his movies, all of his like most popular movies are produced by Steven Spielberg
Spielberg
and Amblin.
And they just seem like they fit to me in my head if I just didn't direct them. Like that Steven Spielberg would direct some of these himself.
Doesn't Back to the Future feel like it could be Steven Spielberg?
I mean, Who
100%,
Framed
yeah.
Roger Rabbit is like could have been done by. I thoroughly believe it could have been done just as good by Steven Spielberg because of the Animaniacs.
That's true, but I've also seen Ready Player One, so I'm not sure about that.
I would say, but like at the time, you know, be like at more closer, like not now Steven Spielberg, but the one that came up with the Animaniacs. Like I do think that's what they have in common. The Animaniacs and like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the sense of humor.
In the behind the scenes I watched, Steven Spielberg was saying that this was a love letter to that time because, you know, so much of that golden age of Walt Disney. And I can't believe we're finally getting to talk about Walt. I did it. I'm just- But I thought this was funny. And like the ultimate boomer thing too. He was like, and you know, we're really making this movie for Walt. And I was like, oh my God. Still didn't know the truth about him.
I know, yeah, exactly.
But it's just, this movie's just got boomer written all over it.
It does,
You know what
man.
I mean? And you can't help it when you have these guys like Steven Spielberg, who the 40s and the 50s, it's just his thing, you know? And he was talking about all the golden age of animation, which me and him have different definitions of the golden age of animation. He was talking about, you know, like the original Snow White and all of those Looney Tunes cartoons and things like that. But it's just amazing that they were actually able to get this done.
That's just one of the things that continuously blows me away anytime I think about this movie is just like, you have Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse in the same damn frame. Like, when the fuck is that going to
And
happen?
Daffy and Donald.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
Which
it's impressive.
I do have an interesting, I guess, fact that I learned about that is in the contract-wise that they wanted to make sure both of them didn't have much more time than the other one. So that's why Robert Zemeckis and them were like, if one of them shows up in the screen, the other one has to be in the screen too.
They're homies.
And they did it well. Like, the
They
dueling
did.
piano scene with the two ducks. Like,
Yes,
that shit's so
that's
sick.
one of my
Like,
favorite scenes.
Yeah, that's
This
awesome.
was their first collaboration, Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
The second being when that picture of them on the log together when they're sad because somebody died.
Oh my gosh!
You know what I'm talking about?
When the artist died, when the
Yeah.
artist died, the
Jesus
drew for
Christ.
both the Looney Tunes and Disney. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, that's the weirdest.
I was reading an article about this movie, and they were saying that it's like Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg accomplished something that Marvel is still like grappling with today,
Like Sony
right?
and
Because
stuff
it's
like
like
that.
anytime a Spider-Man movie gets made, he becomes the child of divorce of like,
Yeah.
who's getting him? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
Are we gonna make another one? Are we not gonna make another one? And maybe just because movies were so much cheaper at the time, it was amazing to see that every character in this film was secured for $5,000 flat.
This movie was not cheap though.
Well, I'm saying it's
No,
cheap
no,
now.
yeah, no. In retrospect, but I just want to say at the time,
like I'll give you 5 G's for Spider-Man.
yeah.
Bro. Like,
All right,
that's a
done.
steal,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Especially it might have to do with the time. Well, actually, then they were popular. But remember that middle time where like the superhero comics were like they're basically giving them away because nobody really cared about them anymore. So I was
Yeah.
gonna say maybe it was in that era, but I do agree with you. And a lot of articles that I read about this, trying to like buffer up for the pod, did say this is a feat that'll probably never be done again.
Yeah.
In the aspect of that you could have the Looney Tunes, WB, Disney all loan you their characters, but because there's a common goal here.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it was almost okay. The only other thing I could think of is the film Akira, right?
Yeah.
And not because of the subject matter, but that they got artists from different countries, different animation studios. Like this was a Japanese and Korean effort to bring this thing. Like this is going to represent like Eastern animation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So this is something we're all proud of and happy to take part of. And even Chip and Dale, I feel like doesn't have that.
No.
It's more for it's obviously cameo based. You know what I mean? And then even other than that, Roger Rabbit is actually a good movie.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
doesn't need all of that
No.
other stuff. If it was just Roger and the noir detective story,
It
this
would
is
be
still
great.
an amazing
Yes.
movie.
Yeah.
It's extra that all of that other stuff is in there. And then in Chip and Dale, the story's okay. That's why for me it's like a 3.5 and Roger Rabbit is a 5.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Is that Chip and Dale is just more it's more of a celebration of the fact that they're doing it again than actually trying to make
Correct.
a great film.
Yeah, no, I agree
This
with
has
that.
this has a plot and a basis just like any other movie, and it just happens to be the cartoons just happen to be the people affected by it.
This is a Humphrey Bogart movie. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, straight up. Like, if this movie was made without any of the tunes or any of that aspect, like, it'd probably still a very
It's
enjoyable
Chinatown.
movie.
That's the movie.
Yeah. But then the tunes just adds,
No
it's so
Polanski
much
talk.
fun.
I'll mute your mic. Bring him up again. We were just doing something so innocent. You have to
You
bring
bring up
him
Polanski. Well, we brought up Disney. So.
Here we go again. Yeah, we started talking about Walt, so
It was a different
I
time.
thought the table was open.
locker room
Yeah,
talk,
that's
right?
what Roman Polanski also said. It's a different time,
No.
different country.
Cut this, please. Cut this. I don't want this on the record.
Anyways,
Let's talk about Bob Hoskins a little
Yes.
bit, right? Did you guys know he was British? This is
I
the thing
didn't
that
till
threw me.
the interview
Most
until
surprised.
last night.
I didn't even know till right now. There's
Until
no
the interview-
fucking
till
way.
the interview last night where I heard him talking about this, I did not know he was British and doesn't even sound close to what he sounds like in this movie.
Doesn't even look like it. That's pretty
I'm
interesting.
like waiting for him to have his voice from the movie, and then he's like, "Oh, this film's bloody."
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah,
Hello, governor.
That was the same way I
I'm
had to
having a
put on
bloody
the,
awful time making this film. They keep throwing me in the trash can.
I had to turn on the subtitles. Like, what is he saying?
That's crazy.
I thought British people weren't real.
But I was thoroughly blown away with him, even from the first time that I watched this movie, knowing how the hell did you accomplish the performance that he did. You know, it's a great performance on its own. I know, actually, yesterday I was telling my brother this, that there was times before where I felt that maybe it could have been a bigger name as like that detective, or it could have been a quote unquote better actor. But after yesterday's watch, he just fits the character so well, and the type of cartoon, I guess, I would say emotion that is present in the whole film. Like, he just seems like a cartoon detective.
Yeah.
That's an actual person.
No, he does. I was reading that apparently they wanted Bill Murray.
They want Bill Murray for every
I
old
know.
movie that we've talked about. Have
I
you
know.
noticed?
Yeah, every single thing is him and like Jack Nicholson.
Listen
but
here, boomers. He's not as good as you think he is. I'll just be fucking honest, since we have to talk about him so much.
I mean, would he probably have been good? Yes, but I also I love his performance, and the one thing that I really do think that is like really impressive about his performance is that like it seems like probably like 80 to 85% of the interactions that he has in this movie are with non-existent people.
Yes.
It's the toons, and to be able to to basically just sit there and like act alone almost. It's impressive to me.
So I'm not even being hyperbolic here. I think this is one of the all-time great film performances
Me too.
ever.
Me too.
Like
Yeah.
Oscar-worthy.
Yeah.
Like, you should study this. Anytime you're ever going to attempt to do something like this, Bob Hoskins should be the template. You know what I mean? Because, okay, so to get into the film history of this movie a little bit, this is not the first time that something like this has been attempted. So I don't think we should even try to say that.
Give it that
because
credit.
I was looking into it, and it's like they were doing. Warner Brothers tried this in the 30s. Like, it's a
Wow.
small short film of Porky Pig driving through LA traffic.
Oh,
And then, what is the film? There's films like The Three Caballeros, right, where it's humans dancing against buildings that are animated, right?
Yeah.
Or you even have Mary Poppins with the penguins.
Good point.
But
True.
the thing is that at the time, no one really understood how to do this, right? So when you watch Mary Poppins, when Dick Van Dyke is dancing with the penguins,
Oh, yeah.
his eye line isn't there. You know what I mean? And this isn't my own discovery. I learned this watching behind the scenes. It was called Roger Rabbit and the Secrets of Toontown. So
Sick.
if you love this movie, you should check out that documentary, because Roger Rabbit is like narrating it with the... What's the lady's name in this movie?
Dolores?
Dolores. Yeah. It's Dolores and Roger, and they're your
That's pretty
hosts
cool.
for the documentary. But a big thing about this movie was just how far the animators had to go to make this look even better than it ever had before, because this is the first time it had ever been a feature-length movie. So a thing they did was that they basically shot the movie twice, right? They would shoot it with Bob Hoskins, and then they would go back and shoot it again. And the animation team, luckily, would be able to work around any flaw that would happen. So if Bob Hoskins happened to be looking the wrong way, like, okay, an example is when Roger first comes to his office, and Roger puts his back against the wall and he goes on his tiptoes, right? That is only because Bob Hoskins missed the eye line. So they're like, well, let's just animate him standing on his tiptoes and then it'll match.
Smart.
Or when he's in the speakeasy behind the bar and the light is flashing on him,
That's the good one.
that was like, okay, well, us as the animators will move the light to match Roger, and that's how come when it's on him, you can really tell the difference. And it's just that level of care that, honestly, I would say you don't see anymore.
No.
I'm gonna add to that. I do have a lot of notes on that too. Just I think that's why this movie will never be done again. the feat will this will not be done again. I think a big point that people have to know is that computers, okay, one, they weren't very good at this point. So even to try to use them is like already, you're trying to use one computer is probably
like the
really
one in the
expensive.
Thing.
Yeah, it's a computer that's as big as Karen and SpongeBob, you know. So that wasn't they tried, but it just looked bad. So what they did is they got 300 artists from across the world. So yeah, but basically, Gus kind of touched on it, but there were scenes where he was literally recording with nothing there, and they had to establish that like a line sight was the thing that they were like, that's how you make it look real, like that he has to establish that he's looking at it eye to eye. So yeah, they would use a 3D model for the first time they would shoot it, and then they would use nothing for the second ones. Later they took the thing to LucasArts, and they kind of came up with the new animation style to like put in the animation into the movie, and it was like a 4-layer thing that LucasArts came up with. And basically what it did was it gave it like its regular layer that was on a cartoon, but then they gave it one with like all shadow and then all contrast and then all sharpness. And then what it really did was give it that 3-dimensional look to the characters, and they would apply better into the real world. And so a lot of the stuff that I think that ends up working really well in this movie is like if Roger, for example, I can't remember the top of my head, but he kind of like holds a gun, or some of them hold a gun, and then in those places they did have like these robotic arms that they kind of created for the movie, and they would hold the gun out, but then the animators drew over that. But the reason I think that works so well is because the actual gun is a tangible object in the real world, and since we see Roger Rabbit kind of like clutching it or whatever character it is, it's what makes it stand out from any other movie that had attempted this before. Every other movie kind of fell flat. Like you said, the Mary Poppins was the one that I didn't grow up seeing, but I saw it brought up to kind of like compare these two, and it just doesn't hit the same.
That's a 10-minute sequence.
Exactly.
And we're talking about a 100-minute
movie.
And it didn't even like it just didn't work out really well. And I will say that I had the figures down, because it was a $45 million budget for this movie, which was huge at the time. But what it ended up being was it cost $250,000 and $300,000 per minute of animation.
It's crazy.
104 minutes.
Speaking about the gun thing, right? I don't know if you saw this, but in the Secrets of Toontown thing I watched, you know the scene where the weasels come to interrogate Bob Hoskins?
I know exactly what I think you're going to talk about.
That's puppeteer work.
Yeah, is it? Okay.
I did see that too.
So
Yeah.
it's literally a guy that they built a couple, what would you call them? Like, not steeples, but they built a small structure for him to be above the set.
A small, yeah.
And he's walking around with the gun, and he's like just doing master puppetry
Like the
work.
octopus too, when he's holding all the bartender.
So a big thing about this film is that another reason it looks so good is not only the animation. This movie's got like theme park level animatronics in it and computers and stuff like that. So I'm gonna keep touching on that scene of the interrogation when when Roger is in the sink and he spits out
The
real
water.
water.
Yeah,
right?
so good.
And it's because they built a machine
Spout.
to go under that and to spit out the real water. So there's so many just things when I'm watching this movie, I didn't realize how meta the making of this
It's crazy.
movie was. Another instance would be like when Roger's breaking the plates over his head. They built a robot to just pick up plates and break it over his head. So
It's sick.
It just, I'm like, that is meta.
Ridiculous.
You know what I mean? Because it's like the movie is about cartoons being directed by humans, and then when you're making the movie, it's humans directing robots
Yeah.
to be turned into cartoons.
funny.
Like, it was just a mind fuck for me to see that.
There really are there's just so many things like that I picked up on this time, like just little small details that I'm like, you really probably didn't even have to go this far to do that. But the fact that you did is incredible. Like there's a scene when Roger is like going to sit in the detective's brother's chair, and he pulls it out and has spider webs and dust all over it. And when he moves his handprint's on there, like the dust is gone.
Yeah.
When he's jumping on the bed, like when he hits the bed, like you can see exactly like where his feet are. Like I don't know, it's just so
When
fucking
he was
impressive.
in the speakeasy and that light is going back and forth, his ear becomes translucent, like, just like a rabbit's
Yeah,
ear would be.
like the
Yeah.
attention to detail it's unlike anything I've seen in a lot of movies.
They had to hand draw frame by frame, which is ridiculous to think. But then it ended up being 82,080 animation frames that were hand drawn that took 2 years to get done.
It's crazy.
And I did want to bring up that whole 4-layer thing that LucasArts actually came up with, and it's called chiaroscuro. is what it's called.
Is that like Spanish or something? What is that?
I mean, it's Latin for sure, but it just means the use of light and shadows to make 2D figures look 3D.
Damn, you have to use a dead language to describe how they made Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
that's why.
That's how gnarly we're going.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, since you were talking about LucasArts and those fellas who made the movie.
You know.
The boys.
The guys.
The small team over there.
Yeah. The guy who was being interviewed for the short, or for the documentary, he was saying that every other project that LucasArts had done at that time had totaled 500 animated shots, and this movie had 1,000. So this movie was harder to make than every other movie they had made at that point, all combined.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What? Like for a rabbit?
That's wild.
Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're thinking about this movie, you're like, it almost doesn't make sense to me that they put this much effort into this movie.
It was the most expensive film ever produced in the 80s.
At that time.
Oh boy.
And it has the longest, at least in the 80s, it had the longest on-screen credits after because of everybody that was involved. Like, you know what I mean?
The tunes are in 53% of the movie. So more than half of the movie has some type of
Animation.
animation that they had to draw onto it.
That's crazy.
I will say this, that as a kid, I assumed, I don't know if this is the same for you guys, I had assumed that Roger Rabbit was a character before the movie. I thought, like, as a kid, they give the movie to them, like The Simpsons have a movie, but they were already established.
No,
I didn't know for a while that this was something that they had, like, there wasn't very much of it, and then they built on it. And then, again, key to, like, just knowing detail, Robert Zemeckis or whoever it is, his whole team, like, I ended up finding out that they picked, like, special features from every other character that was popular in the golden generation. So, like, they gave it Droopy Dog's orange hair, Bugs Bunny's cheeks, Porky Pig's bow tie, Goofy's pants, Mickey's yellow gloves. And then his color scheme all put together is the American flag, which I guess that's one of the stuff that's subconscious. I never really thought of it like that up until in the scene where he puts it like as the American flag, and then I was like, oh, what? Oh yeah, his outfit does look like the American flag, which is propaganda at its finest.
American exceptionalism.
But I'm American, so goddamn it, so it's fine.
So I cry when I see Roger.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he looks like old
America.
Glory. Shoot. Where do you want to go from here? Because I had something, but then that fucking America joke just made me lose it.
Well, we were talking about like the budget and stuff like that. Maybe it was something around there that you want to talk about, or something about LucasArts. No, you already got that point across.
No. Yeah, go ahead. If you guys have anything you really need to get off your chest right now before we get into the film, let's just do that.
I did want to go back a little bit to Bob Hoskins. Yeah, because I saw an interview of him kind of going into depth of how hard it was for him to actually get into this mindset. He said it was the hardest he had to do, and he studied his daughter a lot because, as we know, kids, well, he said this, he's like, kids, their imagination is closer to the front of their brain. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but what he was saying is that as a kid, you merge your reality with imaginations, which is why we kind of have imaginary friends and why we're more in connect with that type of like part of our brain. But he said this, so he would watch his daughter talk to her imaginary friend, and like the way that her daughter always thoroughly did feel that that person was there. She's like, so she would always maintain that line of sight, and I kind of went into that. She's like, and kind of tried to tap into that like child infancy type of thing. And yeah, he said he kind of ended up getting a little crazy because
I love that. I don't actually know if toddlers are more creative, but I'm pretty sure I am. I don't know, bro. You want to have an ideas off with me, little kid?
Yeah, because I don't know how much truth there is to the part of your brain that's imagination being closer to the front, and I don't even know if that necessarily means that it's more prevalent, like it just being in the front. But I get where he's coming from because it is true. Kids are more in touch with their imagination, and even I remember thoroughly having an imaginary friend. So,
well, as a kid, my favorite game to play was never an actual game. It was, okay, I'm gonna be this character, you be this character, and we're gonna run around the backyard, and we're gonna get into all these crazy things. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm Superman, you're Batman, and we're gonna have to go up the building, exactly, even though we would just be standing in the front yard. You know what I mean? And now if we did that,
you're crazy. I mean, it's literally, it was either that or like line up all my toys and make up a story and then have them, go at the story.
No, exactly.
I mean, honestly, as a kid, it's way easier to put a blank piece of paper in front of you and draw something or come up with it. And now, if you told me to, I'd be sweating. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't think of anything. Oh, I need to go smoke first.
Draws a son, yeah.
Yeah, he said it towards the end of, like, after filming, he's like, I had weasels and rabbits jumping out of the wall.
Those fuckers ever come out of the wall?
Yeah, exactly
they do. But I will say that adding another to this, why I think he is such a great actor is he had to also make up what Jessica Rabbit looks like, because he had an idea of what every character looked like. They had already drawn up Roger. They had already drawn up, obviously, Mickey. They're all done already. But Jessica Rabbit, they had no idea what she would look like. And then Robert Zemeckis told them, be like, I want you to imagine your greatest sexual fantasy up there and just like,
Jesus
look
Christ.
at it just like it. And then he was like, I thought this was funny. He was like, if I do that, this is going to be an X-rated movie.
Oh my
But then
God.
he's like, but then when I saw the movie and I saw what Jessica Rabbit looked like, he's like, wow, my imagination was tame. And I felt really bad because I was like, Disney has a wilder like imagination than I do, like it's sexual fantasy than I do. Like they gave me the control to think of anything I wanted, and what they actually drew up there is sexier than what I thought of.
Those animators back in the day were some freaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
This movie has made a whole generation of people unreasonably horny for cartoons.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all because of Jessica Rabbit. I did remember what I was going to say, and it's because you brought up Bob Hoskins.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw this, but one way that they would help with the immersiveness of this movie is they had a rubber blow-up Roger doll, right?
Yeah, 3D model.
And then they had that's different. There was a rubber one and there was a 3D
Okay,
one,
okay.
right? But then also, and we haven't talked about him yet, the voice of Roger, Charles Fleischer,
Yeah.
he would be on set wearing a Roger Rabbit outfit,
That was cool.
just shouting out his lines
That's
so
hilarious.
that it would be more immersive for Bob Hoskins. And this guy, it just looks psychotic. Like when I was watching the documentary,
sounds
you know what I
like,
mean?
yeah.
Like this is some wild shit that they literally don't do this anymore. But talking about Charles Fleischer a little bit, he said that he's just seen a picture of Roger and the voice just came out of him. He saw Roger and was like, this makes sense to me that he would sound just like this. And it was a go from there. They
love
never
it.
even argued it. And
So manic.
It's so funny.
He's so manic.
I can't even do a good one. but
Oh my God.
I love like the cheeks wiggling. I just love everything about the performance. And we rarely get to talk about voice acting on this podcast. And I hope we do more animation because voice acting is a whole other beast.
Yeah.
And these people are even more expressive sometimes than an actor in front of camera would be, because you have to really bring this manic energy out of you. Like I've talked about on pod before, when I was really young and I would watch HBO with my mom, they would show like how Shrek was made. And then you would see Eddie Murphy and Mike Myers doing the voices. And to see how just psycho they look doing it is something that's always stuck with me. That voice acting is just this whole other beast that never gets the recognition it deserves.
That's true.
I forgot for what movie it was that I had looked this up, but it was somebody kind of talking about there's actors who do voiceovers, and there is voice actors. Like it is not the same thing. And I was for Batman because they're talking about like Mark Hamill proved that he was both. Like because Mark Hamill's damaged his vocal cords from being the Joker, and it's kind of what Gus is talking about. He didn't do anything like that for Luke, and it's like you can't imagine all that effort being put into something that your face is not being shown.
As Luke Skywalker, he was basically just Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And as the Joker, he had to embody and become... Like, I would argue that the voice acting... You know how actors like to do the whole, like, this tore into my psyche and it ripped me a whole new one? Like, I feel like voice acting would maybe do that
go
more.
there.
Because you have to become, like,
Imagine it.
psychotic,
Yeah.
like the Joker, to
Yeah,
do it.
for
For it to be sold well, and if you don't, you sound like Chet Hanks doing the Joker.
Straight up.
Or like Jared Leto, and like in reality, be like you're not selling me on it,
Yeah.
But because it's a voice actor and you have to give that extra effort because you're like I have to show some emotion without a face. Like I have to just do it through my voice.
And how do you convey that? right?
Exactly.
And it's through those bombastic movements in the booth, And it's so crazy to think, like, even now during like these COVID times when they were making movies, that some of these roles were being like, they would send the equipment to an actor and it's like, just go in your closet and record this and then we'll send it to you. Or like send it back to us when
Yeah.
it's done. And the whole voice actor versus actor thing, I always think a good example of that is the Studio Ghibli movies, because when you watch the English dubs, like, I'm sorry, as much as I love Porco Rosso, Michael Keaton is not a voice actor.
No.
He's an actor
Reading.
just reading,
Yeah.
using his voice. You know what I mean? And
That's his voice. It's
those
not anything
Studio
special.
Ghibli movies, the English dubs, I've never been worried about their actors being anything other than celebrities to get you to see the movie. And that is a huge problem with animation, and I think why children's movies in general and animated movies don't have the same power that they did during Disney's golden age. Because like Little Mermaid, Lion King, all of those things. Well, Lion King's kind of a bad example, but it wasn't about the popular actor. You know what I mean?
voice.
And after Aladdin is when that took off because Robin Williams was so iconic as the genie. Then it became, well, who are we going to get to be the voice instead of just this wonderful
making one.
performance?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think Robin Williams really tiptoed that line of, I don't think it's Robin Williams. The genie is just the genie.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? And I feel like this movie and Charles Fleischer, like, I never heard anyone else that sounds like Roger Rabbit. I don't know why I want to keep saying Robert.
Robert Rabbit.
Robert
Robert
Zemeckis.
Rabbit, his
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah, exactly.
His stunt double, Robert. But I've never heard anything else that sounds like Roger. And even if Charles Fleischer is this prominent voice actor who, you know, I didn't really look into him too much. If he's done 100 other roles, I wouldn't even be able to tell you what they
Which
are.
other one, yeah.
Because I'm sure he
so
puts that
unique.
energy into all the different roles he's done. But that's my spiel on the voice.
That's a good point, though. I think that's why this movie works so well. They're not really worried. Those characters built themselves for their voices, not the other way around. Not we got Humphrey Bogart to be, whatever.
Exactly. Want to talk about some of our favorite moments from the movie?
Yeah.
Or have we done a synopsis? Do we really need one here?
Well, we can talk about our
I have a
cast
tiny one if
little
you
You
want
want
me
to do
to.
the tiny one?
Yeah, a tune-hating detective is a cartoon rabbit's only hope to prove his innocence when he's accused of murder.
Okay, and with cast, you want to just sprinkle that in as we're talking
Yeah,
about the
because
moments?
the only other everybody else is voice actors. It's
Yeah.
not like we actually see them.
no
that are
offense to
major.
Dolores.
Dolores,
But,
yeah.
but the only other one I did want to bring up is obviously Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
because he's
Judge Doom.
very 80s.
The partnership with Robert Zemeckis,
Zemeckis,
you know,
yeah.
Doc Brown. See, even him, his voice is Doc Brown. You know
I
what I mean?
think
Where it's
so,
like you
yeah.
can't not hear it in everything he does.
It's true.
So even Christopher Lloyd, who gives these wonderful performances, he still can't. He doesn't have the ability to stray away
shake
from
off Doc
sounding
Brown.
like Doc Brown. Moments in this movie. We won't go scene by scene, but what are your guys' favorite moments? Because I'm sure we'll bring up Judge Doom.
Yeah,
How are
yeah,
you not
yeah.
gonna have a favorite moment with him, right?
Not true. Favorite moments? Man, there's so many in this movie.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go.
A small one for me is when Eddie is drunk in his office and we're panning across his office and we see all these pictures of his brother and stuff like that. And my favorite one is how apparently they're like the son of Barnum and Bailey. You know what I mean? It's like on the road with dad. And like you get to see that they were these comedian detectives. You know what I mean? Like they loved the humor. They loved working with tunes. But I think my favorite one is when it's him and his brother and Dolores and they're like in front of the bar and it's like two clowns and a broad walk into a bar.
Two clowns in a broad.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
see
just
that.
that small
I caught
stuff.
that this time
And for
watching
me,
it.
like how we were talking about with Suspiria, it's like maybe not remembering the beginning. I never remembered that. Like that is something to me. I was like, am I watching like an extended cut of Roger
Exactly.
Rabbit or something? And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't seen this movie in,
In a while.
in many
Yeah.
years. I seen it enough as a child.
Yeah.
That was the thing is I would watch it like twice a day sometimes. But as an adult now, seeing that scene, it just totally threw me off. I was like, I don't remember this at all. So I had a fantastic time watching it because so much of it was brand new again.
I guess want to touch up on that point that rewatching it as an adult and the movies that we've dived into and stuff we touched upon in the beginning a little bit. This still is a really good movie on its own way, and I think that's what every single time I've watched it older, I start to see more of the reasons why it is a good film on its own without the cartoons, and how it just a thoroughly fleshed out detective story.
Yeah.
Speaking of how you brought up that Bob Hoskins was like, my imagination is more tame than Disney's. Just the way this movie starts too, with the Tom and Jerry like cartoon, right? And the baby Herman walks off the set and he looks up the lady's skirt.
Yeah.
It made me think too. I was like, this is really a different time because this is when Disney still had the balls to, Disney and Touchstone, everyone involved. I don't want to give the sole credit to Disney because that's not really fair, but everyone involved in this movie made it to where this is still something that everyone can enjoy because there's jokes that kids don't understand.
The innuendos
That
are there.
are
A
definitely
lot
for
of
adults.
innuendos.
Patty cake.
Yeah,
Dude,
exactly.
like,
I didn't know that was sex. You know what I mean? When I was a
Exactly.
kid, I was like,
Exactly.
I guess that's funny that they're playing patty cake. Or the famous one that we've been quoting all day. It's like, is that a rabbit in your pocket?
you just
or
happen to see me.
me?
Yeah. No, it's so funny.
That's so.
Throwing it back to favorite parts, I don't know. There really are so many of my favorite parts, but one of the things that has always stuck in my head, I know that we talked about this before the pod started, is the cartoon gun that he has at the
That's
end.
so
like
sick.
I always just thought that's so
I have that one
fucking
written
cool.
What in the Sam Hill? When he wakes him up.
Yeah.
Where'd he go?
And
we
then
have to do an impression. He might do Hannibal Lecter.
we made
He might
it.
do Hannibal Lecter, but
I
he'll do
know.
the cartoon bullet
I
from
can do
Roger
it.
Rabbit.
I could do it.
The thing about impressions, it's not if you can do it.
So funny. I also think that the bar scene when Judge Doom comes in there and Roger's breaking the plates on his head and all that, like that is such a fun scene, I think. And then also like just, you know, I mean, I've remembered it, but just watching it now, I expected it to be a lot more jarring and not as seamless as it was. But when he really actually goes into Toontown and he's just running around a cartoon, like it really does still work. So
Yeah, it does.
I was impressed by that.
I have a couple too, but I guess the main sequence is whenever he goes to the Paint and Ink Club, which is where Donald and
Oh, dude.
It's
This
with-
is it.
Yeah.
As a kid, this was where I'm like, I'm fully into this movie every time I
and
watch
I
it.
think it literally starts right when he gets in. You see Donald and Daffy just going at each other, and this is where it just becomes universal to me, because as a kid it was funny to me. They were both really funny to me as a kid, and they both do the jokes that they would in the Looney Tunes or in the Disney movies. But then you also get like Mr. Acme, right? He's there, and then you get the whole
Horn
invisible
dog.
ink thing. Yeah, and then you see Betty Boop, which is like, interestingly enough, my grandma's favorite cartoon. And then I even as a
Mine
kid,
too. Boomer shit.
yeah, but it's like, but even as a kid, I knew, but that's my grandma's favorite cartoon, and that's my favorite cartoon, and that's my dad's favorite cartoon, and then you get the introduction of Jessica Rabbit, which I think is just that. So I'm just saying, like, that whole segment there, from going to like a comedic relief, giving you the info that you need, and then going to Jessica Rabbit's introduction. I just think it's like the culmination of why that movie is perfect. You know, it's like it has everything that I could want comedic wise. It also furthers the plot, and it introduces you to a character that you are also, it's like the femme fatale character. She's drawn like a femme fatale, so you're like, she's in on this. You see the whole patty cake thing. I just think like that scene is
She's not bad. She's just
drawn
drawn
that
that
way.
The Ink and Paint Club, I always thought that as a kid, the big gorilla scared me. I used to
Oh,
think,
yeah,
no, terrifying.
I always
Yeah.
was like, wise ass.
Yeah.
Because I forget what Bob Hoskins tells him, but it's obviously a monkey joke, right? Oh, he
Yeah.
tells him, I like your monkey suit.
Yeah.
I always,
It's wise ass.
as an adult, I always found it funny that Bob Hoskins is like racist to cartoons, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I had written down, that I like that this movie kind of merges a little bit as to like the cartoons are minorities for the time worth. Like it kind of really treats them like nobody wants to defend them, but
Second-class citizens.
Eddie Valiant will do it. I also really
This movie did what Bright was trying to do.
yeah, exactly. Bright got brought up, man.
I never thought I'd see the day. Yeah.
It was supposed to be my Star Wars.
Oh my god.
But I will say something interesting that I found on this watch, and I think it hits a little close to home because we're from California. We're really close to LA. But the comment on the public transportation system,
Only a toon could come up with that.
and
on
how
the freeway.
and how corporations really destroyed what could possibly be the same San Francisco red line that runs. Like, we would have a really good public transportation system in Los Angeles if they didn't literally monopolize that, the same way that they want to monopolize Toontown. And I just thought it was funny that this movie dissects that.
Especially because we're little kids, right?
Yeah,
We're
Yeah.
seeing this.
exactly.
I'm like, what the hell?
And then, like you
I didn't
said-
realize that this was about corporate greed and land
Yeah.
development.
Socioeconomic problems
Yeah.
in Roger
Because
Rabbit.
it's like,
Yeah.
like I said, because it hits close to home, because we visited LA a good amount, and like traffic it sucks.
It's crazy.
And this freeway was made to not have that traffic, but it's kind of like the old ways, and that's what this movie kind of talks about. The old ways had a different way of looking at things, and it just worked differently, and it was just almost quote unquote better for certain reasons. But I just thought it was really interesting how this film had like that side commentary on it, like you're
Yeah,
saying.
and that's the thing about noirs. Like, I think maybe that's where we've taken some different things away from the movie. Because, like you said, this is something that made you really love noirs, right? But for me, noir is like a genre I enjoy because to me, it's like utterly hilarious. Like, I think they're so funny.
Yeah,
Like,
they
I think
are.
Humphrey Bogart is probably the funniest actor who's ever lived, and not even because he's trying.
Not
to
on
be.
purpose, yeah.
It's just the lines that they give him, the way it's delivered. And I always love with noirs that
Hey,
they
toots.
kind of become anticlimactic because they're always about something that is out of people's hands. The
Yeah.
detective is just seeing something he can't control. Okay, land development for a freeway, Chinatown with the water. You know what I mean? The nice guys.
Exorcist.
The Ford Company. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
they
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
that they were poisoning the atmosphere and they didn't say anything.
Anything. Yep.
I always find it funny that noirs are about these things that, like, as a kid, I'd be like, you've lost me.
What?
I don't think I'm
Yeah.
supposed to even care anymore, you know? So for this movie to really be about land development and corporate greed and the creation of freeways.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
No, it is pretty wild. Yeah.
That's where I'm like, this has to be for adults somewhat, right?
No,
I think that's
100%.
for them.
And
I
it's
mean-
themed the minority. That's what I mean. Like,
Yeah. This movie really is one of the more, like, I guess, risque cartoons that there are. Like, it does teeter that line, but, it is a kid's movie, and that's why I think that, it's so good, because we can still watch it now and not only just appreciate it because we liked it as kids, but because it is this fully fleshed out world that really, it has real stakes, and it works.
I had it written down that I think it works in a unique way because it has, like, your noir issues, but it subverts those expectations with cartoon tropes.
Yeah.
Which is like, what the fuck? Like, what did you... Because I thought a really, really good one was, like, she's like, oh, he hates tunes. They dropped the piano on his brother's head. I mean, like, that's funny, but not at the same time. Like, 'cause if that actually happened, that's fucked up. But in a
That's
cartoon...
the plot of an A24 horror movie.
Yeah.
My husband was killed by a falling piano, and now I'm being haunted by a piano in my countryside home that I'm vacationing.
Like, I mean, great point. Because, like, if you have that scene from Men in this, it'd just be, as he's falling down. But it's exactly
my
like, it can be
God.
funny. But if it actually happened in real life,
in Men, it would be the imprint of her husband who went 10 feet through the concrete.
and then he'd land in hell. And then it'd be Donald Duck laughing down there,
Yeah.
And I that's what I think. It's so weird how it just takes something so serious and subverts it with comedy, but you still get that same feeling from it or that you would from a regular noir.
All right, not to put the hurry on us, but Nate's got a hard out, so let's just start rapid firing our favorite moments here. I know we have to talk about the melting shoe, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's probably one of the most tragic things I've ever
So
seen in films.
that shit
right?
fucked me up as a kid.
And that's his
dude.
intro. I think that's what we're talking about. That's the intro to the villain.
To Doom, Christopher Lloyd.
It's a
Yeah.
really good intro, and it is fucked up. What
Yeah.
the shoe do?
Yeah.
It's crazy to see because, like you say, they subvert these tropes by it being cartoons,
Yeah.
right? And like this dip is something the Mexican cartel would use.
I've been dipped. Yeah. I got dipped.
And we're just seeing 4 or 5 people witness a murder just be off. He's judge, jury, executioner. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? He doesn't even have to go through the court system.
Nope.
It's like this is
He's
the
a
weirdest
fucking
judge I've
Toon
ever
Patrol.
seen.
Yeah, dude.
It's just like the minority thing. That's what I mean. Like, nope, there's no fair trial for you. Like, I said you're guilty, so you're guilty.
So
You
I
have to
love the
die.
weasels, obviously.
Yes.
I
Those
love
are-
the main one and how he always says things. Like the typical cartoon trope is that he never pronounces anything right, and he's like, "Hey, boss, you want me to dispose of these guys instead of dispose of them?" You know what I mean?
I fucking love the psychotic weasel, and his eyes are just always
Oh.
constantly changing. Like it's
he's
so
tripping
good.
and shit.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, and we've been talking about Humphrey Bogart, I'm pretty sure the lead weasel is supposed
Humphrey
to be
Bogart.
Yeah.
I could see
you know?
that. Yeah.
I love them laughing to death. Like
Yeah, that's
as
so
a kid,
funny.
That makes me crack up. And still to
Yes.
this day, I feel like I'm gonna die that way. Like hanging out with you guys one day.
That would not be a
I
bad
thought,
way to
wow,
go.
That'd be such a great way
That
to
would
go.
not be-
I'd be at Angel Stadium.
Just floating
my,
away.
my soul leaving my body. 'cause
Angels
I
in the
laughed too hard.
outfield. Yeah.
One of my other standout scenes that I really like too is when he tries alcohol. When they try to.
That's what I
that's
wanted
good.
to bring that up too. Yeah.
So one of the animators I saw said that they needed those moments because Roger is meant to kind of feel human like.
Yeah.
That he's got these very human emotions because he's in love and he's a movie star and he's basically a human but in a rabbit's body, right? But then you still need to bring him back to his cartoon roots. So like the alcohol and stuff like that is that way of doing that because he's gonna explode every once in a while, but you also have to reel him back in because he does walk that line of he could be the most annoying movie character to
yes.
ever exist, but he's not.
100%.
I mean, I find him very sweet. Honestly.
I do too.
I think they play on that, and I do too. But I think they play on that in terms of he says like I'm built to make you laugh. Like that's just what I do. And well, I lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
That's okay. Another moment I really love though is when they're in the movie theaters and he's like, "Nobody takes a wallop like Goofy."
Oh, Goofy! I'm such a fan of Goofy.
He loves it.
But then at the end, Jessica tells him, "Like you're just as funny as Goofy
That
too."
means
And
she
then
fucked
he,
Goofy, dog.
damn, dude.
Damn. Damn.
Damn, dude.
It's like that joke about it's like I was fucking Goofy. Minnie
Oh,
Mouse joke.
I remember what it was actually. Was that who's the one that's trying to kill Acme? The one who hires him to find out what Jessica Rabbit is doing.
RK Maroon.
Yeah, so he tells them like he's silly and stuff, and the only thing that grounds him like us is a heartbreak. Like everything else is a joke to him, but because he loves and he gets a heartbreak, like that'll bring him back. Like that we'll ground him and he'll listen to us. That's what he says.
Yeah.
Savage.
It's such a weird movie.
How
right?
how terrified were you guys the first time you saw the ending of it with Judge Doom and like his reveal that he is a toon? And did it ever scare you? Because that shit scared me honestly.
Yeah and no, because I think that scene is so circus-like that by the time we're there at the reveal, I've had too much fun. Like the fun doesn't balance out the scare.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry, after Bob Hoskins dance and he pulls out the singing Sinatra sword and all of that, I'm just kind of like,
The Sinatra sword.
in the moonlight.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It did. I guess the stretchy part, like the CGI, what it looked like when it looks like a Slender Man type of figure. As a kid, it did creep me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seeing anyone melt when you're 5 years old is kind of a bit much.
It reminded me of Indiana Jones, kind
It
of.
goes back to what I said, like, in I think the Men episode, where it's like the things that are not real scare me more than the real, because
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how am I supposed to process that I just saw somebody melt and that in my little kid brain this could happen to me, and I don't know how to avoid that. I can avoid a serial killer. I can avoid walking down a dark hallway. What if someone pours acid on me?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Like, there's no getting out of that. So as a kid, that is terrifying, of course.
It was.
the other epic scene that I just want to bring up was the other cameo that we get of Mickey and Bugs, which is only done like 3 times ever in film history. I thought it was a funny
And the
joke.
picture
The
of
spare,
Gave him spare.
the spare was funny. I thought that was
So
a funny
funny.
joke. And I did think I wanted to bring up kind of like how Gus said, it just seems like Disney was a little bit more ballsy to let Mickey make like a dirty joke here or make a death joke, or I don't know, kind of go with what Bugs would do.
The fact, like, hearing the word, like, kill out of Mickey's
That's
mouth,
what
I was like, interesting.
Exactly. Like Mickey now would never even say the word kill.
Only on South Park.
Exactly.
Where he's the king of the world,
Dude,
right?
yeah.
I like that episode.
Oh man, yeah, that Bugs moment is so funny. He's like kind of dangerous jumping without a parachute.
I don't think you really want it.
A funny moment to me that's just made me laugh even harder as an adult is when the ugly Jessica
Oh.
Rabbit, when Eddie's like, Toons gets him every time, right? And she slams against the wall, but her titties are just fucking one's going one way.
It's so
I
funny.
was like, what the hell? That shit really had me dying yesterday.
And Nate brought up a good point. When he does go to Toontown, I was expecting this time, because I own it in 4K, so I saw it physical. I was like, is it gonna look really bad? And I mean, okay, to be fair, it doesn't look, oh my god, it looks great,
Right.
but it holds up. It would still look pretty shitty now. So I'm like, I think it would look the same if they did it now.
Well, I would say that the reason that happens with 4Ks, or it doesn't happen with 4Ks, is because it looked good when they made it originally.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? So we saw it on VHSs, on little square TVs, and we saw shittier versions, right?
Yeah.
But with TV, that doesn't work. You can't, like, sometimes if you restore a television show into like 4K or something like
yeah.
that now, you're like, bro, the grain or whatever cheap camera you were using was making this look better. Like Star Trek: The Next Generation. If you watch the new Star Trek: The Next Generation remastered, like that looks like shit.
It looks like, yeah, I see what you mean.
It can't be. You can't hide anything. You know what I mean? It's all there because you're showing things that looked bad.
I think I know
And
what
they
you-
were. I don't know. Does that make sense?
There's a,
No,
no,
it
yeah,
does.
because
Yeah,
there's
it
a
does.
difference. I've obviously learned from collecting it. There's some upscaling to 4K and actually something that was shot on film to put on 4K. So if the original reel of Roger Rabbit, all of that stuff they drew upon, is in film, so film renders all the way up to 8K. We're not there yet, but we can render it up to 8K. But if something was shot, kind of like Paul Thomas Anderson shot, there will be blood on something that can't be bumped. It wasn't going to be put for 4K,
So
but
there
now
will
it has
never
to be
be a 4K
upscaled.
version of
But
it.
it could look like shit because of what you're saying, because the camera wasn't built to be upscaled. Be like, you're doing it because you want it to look better, but it kind of was already made in its best way.
Yeah. Going back to funny moments, I think one of my favorite ones is Yosemite Sam.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
left over the wall.
Yeah,
I'm
that
burning my
shit-
biscuits.
That's so fucking funny. It's so funny.
I love that moment. Let's wrap this up soon because I know Nate's got a heart out. So, any last moments that you really want to talk about?
Well, it's not really a moment, but it is something when I was doing research that I just found to be pretty funny. And like, I just thought, like we were talking about like the kids in imagination earlier, and I just think it kind of ties well with that. Is that after the movie came out, Bob Hoskins' kid, like after he saw it, he wouldn't talk to Bob for like 2 weeks, and finally he was like, "What's going on?" And he's like, you got to work on this movie, and you got to hang out with Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse, and I never got to meet them. Like he was like pissed off about that.
That's fucked up.
So I think that shit's funny.
Rough shit. That's what you get for being a dumb little kid.
Exactly.
Oh man, no, that is really interesting.
Well, it's maybe a weird note to end on for me, but I think the only other movie I've really seen Bob Hoskins Hoskins in at the time that really stood out to me as like something that was important was Mario Brothers.
Oh,
He plays Mario. And hey, when I was 5 years old, that was one of the best movies I've ever seen. So I just think it's cool that Bob Hoskins has done these really bold, brave, risky things. And, you know, Mario fucking sucks. Roger Rabbit's amazing. But split that difference, and I think he took some very interesting roles in his lifetime.
He did.
And I don't think he gets enough appreciation, honestly.
I don't think so either. I love him in this movie. Yeah, he's one of the reasons that this movie is as good as it is. So,
final words, Ro? You have anything left?
I guess I do want to close, and it sucks that we'll probably never get something like this again. The studios kind of, it will be very PG. Like Chippendale is the closest we might be able to get. It kind of, it's a little bit watered down version of this. I can't believe the studios had the valor to do this, and I just wish we could get some more ambitious projects like this.
Yeah, I mean, to end it on a sad note, that is true. That will probably never happen again. You have to protect your IP too much in these days. But whatever.
And when you don't, you get the Winnie the Pooh movie that's coming out. That is
Hell yeah.
what a mess. What a mess.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't protect your IP, which I might watch, but I know it's not with this.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it.
You might get the Pauly Shore Pinocchio.
Yeah. Oh my god. Jesus.
All right, guys. Drop an anvil on the like button and every other button, you know, smash them.
Subscribe to Acme.
Yeah, let us know how much you love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And if you haven't seen it yet, go see it.
Yeah,
This
you
is
gotta
an
see
important
it.
movie in the history of films. I'm not even capping. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is truly, truly an important film.
I'm going to show you Roger Rabbit, then I'm going to grab you like Batman and say, now talk. And you tell me animation's always
Hey, shout out Blu-ray Angel.
It's a masterpiece.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.